Hi, I'm Gino, Lallas, minister of First Harvest Ministries, and I just want to take a moment of your time to explain my testimony of why I'm here working and why I'm here currently and why I chose First Harvest Ministries and Pastor Shane Vaughn and Pastor Karen Vaughn to be my pastors. And it really comes back to almost around 10 years ago when I was 12 years old. I'll never forget going into in youth group at a very young age, at 12 years old, and just getting under this incredible youth pastor of mine and get under this incredible ministry, and just hearing his stories every day and hearing his life every day and just hearing who he is on a day-to-day basis. And he would just share things, whether it's from the Bible, whether it's from his own life experience. And at the end of the day, he would just try to say, you can change your life, and we want you to turn out to be the best kind of person that you can be. And I just remember just thinking at a young age, like, wow, this is so cool. This is so like first off spiritual. This is so moving. And one thing I loved about him is that he had a heart. He had a heart of gold, and he just loved on his congregation so much and cared for his flock. His flock was his youth group, and he did it to the best of his ability to keep it safe and secure. Well, about a year after when I entered into the youth group, he said, I'm going to be actually become an evangelist, and I'm going to be now speaking across the world, so I can no longer be present with you guys. So I said, okay, that's not bad. And we said, hey, we really are looking forward for all the new people that are coming in. We're really looking forward, to someone else taking over that position as the youth pastor. But then as time went on, as we got new people, it just wasn't the same. The kids just didn't find the same connections that they did with him, nor sat through his teachings, or would feel the love, or even just feel comfortable talking to him like they did with the previous youth pastor. And I remember thinking then, like, man, we just lost a really great, powerful man of God, to our ministry and where I'm at, and it's just not the same. And a lot of people would say the same thing. And even though I love all the other pastors that came before them, it was just not the same atmosphere, same shepherd. And as time went on, I always loved getting my hand behind a plow. No matter whatever it is, I get my hand behind a plow when I believe it, when I want to preserve it and to help it thrive. And so I got my hand behind our youth group, and I would say, well, I'm just going to stay here because this is where Yahweh will want me to stay, because, this is the church I grew up with. This is the, family these are the family members that I know of, and I don't know any other place. Well, but as I grew up into, around high school, and then I graduated in 2019, I just really wanted to work at a ministry that I thought Yahweh wanted me to work at. And so I decided to apply for a position, just try to get my way in there, and Yahweh really got to a point where he didn't want me there. And it's because he used the people to stop me, to not be present in their midst. And I was like, well, that's kind of sad. And I took it, not bitterly, but very upset, and really like, well, that's sad that they don't want me. And so all my dreams, it was something I really wanted to do probably since middle school, that I really wanted to be working at this ministry. Well, that didn't happen, and I know why it didn't happen. The Holy Spirit didn't want me to be working there. And so I just decided to just let Yahweh speak where he wants to speak and move in my life. So one thing I remember, I attended a youth camping before then. I remember someone said something like, just wait on God's timing, and also read the Word. Read it, and you'll find the answers. And I remember hearing that, and I just remember as I was going to that season of my life, I was just like so distraught and so like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with my life? And just like, I don't know where I'm going to go. I thought I knew where I was going to go. And that was the next thing that I said I'm going to do, is I'm going to take a fast. I'm going to not listen to any other preacher or teacher that's out there. I don't even want to hear my own, the pastor at our church, because I want to just try to get alone and try to listen to what Yahweh is speaking through me through this book. So I remember opening it up, and I can't remember what book I remember reading first, but I just started reading all of Paul's epistles, all of the books from Peter, from James, and I just kept going over them. And I just remember marking it down, like I got Galatians done, and then I got Timothy done, and then I got James done, and so forth and so forth. I didn't read the entire New Testament, but I read as much as I could in those 30 days. And I'll never forget, it's funny, I only read the New Testament. I didn't read the Old Testament because everybody said don't read it because it's not valid, just read the New. And I said, okay. And so I did. And I just remember reading Paul's letters to the churches, and just the instructions he would give to in Timothy, or even in the Ephesians. And I started even reading some of Corinthians, and get a little Romans here and there. Those are big books, but I just remember reading those two, and just started saying, wow, he's got so much like correction authority, just trying to keep the church stable, unified, and under one mind, and just trying to keep us on the right path and a right mindset. And I remember, I'll never forget coming out of that fasting, and I went to church basically next week, and I remember sitting there and hearing the pastor up on stage, and he would just constantly say this and that, and all of a sudden I kept like automatically the scriptures started just coming in my brain of saying, is he saying it right? Are you making sure he's not false, or this and that? Did he say it? And I would say, yes, he's saying it right. Or sometimes like, I don't think so. But one thing I remember reading in Acts was that in Acts they would just, they devoted themselves, this is in Acts 2:42. And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers, and then so forth and so forth. And I just remember reading those passages of scripture, and there's many others, of how close they were. And I started saying, how disconnected are we as a church nowadays, that we don't want to really talk to one another. We don't want to spend time with one another. We don't really want to engage in one another, nor we don't want to seek the word with one another, and we aren't doing things like we did back. And I remember even just talking to other people that they said, oh man, the 90s and 80s, man, those were just the best time how we did church. Church is nice how it is, but it was much better with our old people and how we used to do things. And I just said, really? That's kind of sad that we don't get to experience something like that. And just even all the fun memories that they would do, come up for prayer, or at the altars they all be together, or different body members, or even just have different kind of fun parties they would have with different family members, or inviting them over, and just the fun memories. And we just saying, man, that's just something that we're missing nowadays. We don't have that anymore. And so I remember just thinking of that, and this was in January of 2020. Keep in mind, this is before COVID happened. And so I was just thinking of that, and I was just like, wow, this is, I love the church that we're at, but I just wish it was more than that. I said, I don't know if we can really go there, because one thing I always just didn't like was that we all are drinking out the milk. We're not, like in Hebrews it says, we're drinking milk and not eating meat. And I would just be upset that's all we'd be teaching is, repent and turn to Jesus, and you'll be saved and have a good life. That's all I would continue to be hearing from the pulpit, and I would not be getting deep into the word of Yahweh. And I just really, really wanted that. And so I just said, I'm still staying in where we're at, and we did. And but we're not sure where we should go. And Yahweh knew exactly what the cries of Israel were crying for. And then then what happened within the next couple months, COVID-19 happened, and the shutdown of all churches went across the whole, United States. All of them shut down, and that really surprised me. It didn't surprise me when they said, okay, we need to shut businesses down and other things. But what surprised me was when they shut the church down, and I said, that's wrong. That shouldn't be happening. That should never happen. Because that's a spiritual thing. That's not a business thing. That's not like a flesh thing. That's a supernatural thing, and I don't want that to ever happen, and it did happen, and I just remember thinking to myself, that's just so weird. And so as time went on, and I remember seeing our church constantly doing lives, and then the pastor would be just looking straight at the camera, and he wasn't really real. And we watched several other pastors as well, and I just said, they're so fake. They're so fake. And I said, man. And I remember hearing, I can't remember who the podcaster said it the best, but they said it like, when the churches shut down, it really showed who they were, because it showed that their whole church was founded under what they needed to use during COVID-19. It wasn't the foundation wasn't settled on the word. It was settled around camera equipment, microphone equipment, lights, whatever it is. And they thought that's what brings in the crowd. And then once COVID-19 happened, it's literally changed. They literally had to use what they had. And they said, this is how we're going to still do the church like it is. But that's wrong when it's not biblically based. And I'm all for, great cameras like we're using, great microphones, great office like this one is. And but if the message that's being pushed out into the airwaves isn't grounded in the word, isn't grounded, then this is all just a show. This is all just nothing. It's just a clanging sound. It's not really getting anywhere. And I remember during that time, there was I'm from Minnesota, so we knew and saw the riots when they happened of the murder of George Floyd in the summer. And I knew right away that was wrong. And the weird thing was, all my church friends, when I would go to church, because then they slowly start opening back up, they said, man, that guy, that's so sad what happened. And I get maybe the first couple of weeks, we didn't really know what happened exactly. But when people start saying, yeah, what they're doing is right, that how they're protesting, it wasn't right, as they're flipping over cars and burning them to the ground, or beating cops up, or just terrorizing people group, no matter who they were, and even burning businesses down. That's not right at all. And they got so violent during that summer. But my church people and all them would say, oh no, this is right. We should mourn for what they're doing. And I could say, that's not right. And then even with then the election happened, and this is where it all changed for me. The election happened, and the weird thing was, I kept my eye on our church. I kept my eye on everyone. And the weird thing was, everybody was very lukewarm into how they were coming about of how you should vote. Like, it should not be a right or wrong vote or a black and white vote. It was, if you want to, you can vote this way. We won't judge. We're the church. And I would be like, well, I'm reading the scriptures, and it's talking all about conviction of this sin or conviction of that sin, and how we should do things, how we're supposed to not be friends of the world. But when you become a friend of God, a friend of Yahweh, you actually become an enemy of the world. That's what you guys are asking for. And I cast my vote for none other than Donald Trump, that supports Israel, supports rights, supports family members, supports all these good moral things. And I knew right away, once I supported that something good was going to come out of it. And the thing was that the next day, we all know what happened, of who cheated on the test, let's say. And I remember just thinking that, like, oh my gosh, I thought, the summer was bad. this is even worse. But I'll never forget the day right after the election. Me and my family were driving and this is cold where we're at. Minnesota's cold. It gets wintry. It gets snowy. Winter comes and it gets really snowy in November, and we were driving in a Kohl's parking lot, and my mom says, "Here, I just want to play this with you guys real quick from this Facebook messenger I have, and I'm on this Facebook Messenger group, and someone sent this to me, and it was none other than the viral video from Pastor Shane Vaughn talking about January the 6th. And when I saw him there, I remember thinking a couple things. I thought, first off, that guy, I love how he sells his product. He says, get in classroom, folks, get your pencils out and your little notebooks. I remember just thinking of that. I thought that was so funny. But then when he started talking about the logistic things, how real this election can go, I started saying, wow, he's got a lot of knowledge, head knowledge. He knows what it is. But then something hit me inside that says, excuse me. Then something hit me inside that was like, wait a second, I don't know how much I believe it, because so many videos I've already was watching during 2020 that says, oh, I know when the end's coming, or I know what's going to happen after the election, this and that. But this guy was different. He still spoke with truth. He spoke with authority, and he did one thing that no one else could do. He gave people hope. And he made you think. And I remember just thinking and sitting there in the car and just saying, wow, that can actually happen. That's cool. And then as time went on, we found him on YouTube. And then he said he had a follow-up video of that, of how they were fact-checked by famous news outlets. And then we started watching him as he went up to January the 6th and went up to the Capitol to support President Trump. And then I just remember just saying, wow, this guy is incredible. And then all of a sudden he did say in passing, oh, hey, by the way, I won't be doing Professor Toto tonight because I have a church and we do church on Friday night, the Sabbath, this and that. And I remember earlier throughout, let me go back, throughout the summertime and during the COVID time, I started watching different kind of videos online, and some of them did dig deep into Israel. Not as deep as what we're learning now, but they did dig deep inside of Israel and who they are, what they're going to do, and what they did, and throughout the Bible, and just different Hebrew things. They started learning just little brief things that now I know fully. And I just remember thinking then was when he said Sabbath, and I think he said some things about Yeshua and this and that. That kind of just kept making me think like, interesting. And this is the white boy. This isn't one of those, Israeli kind of people or Jewish kind of people. This guy's kind of different. And he even joked around, says we do the old like church ways, how we dance and we sing unto him. I said, oh, that's kind of funny. And I think I remember saying this one time to Pastor, and on stage there was a camera, and I'll never forget how he had the camera angled, and he had a song that he was dancing before. I forgot what the song was, but he was dancing unto Yahweh, and the camera showed a video of that, and I saw just a bleep of that during the election season and everything. And I just remember thinking then, man, that's a really small like church. That's a really small whatever it is. But I'm not one to judge, because sometimes small is better. And as time went on, we started looking at Pastor, and then we started just briefly, and then we started looking at Professor Toto. And I just remember hearing different things about Professor Toto, about the Constitution. We started getting educated. But then the other thing I would get out of it would be Pastor Vaughn. I would get some things out of him as well. And I remember hearing the one that was really great was that what really happens to the dead. And that made you really think hard about, what happens when people die. And that one really opened my eyes. And then slowly he started talking about, which I highly encourage you to go watch, this Babylon, the story that you weren't supposed to know. And I remember reading, listening to that sermon, and thought it was like a jaw-dropping moment. Not for me, but also for my family, that we were like, oh my gosh, Christmas, Easter, Mardi Gras, Valentine's Day, all these things I mean, I heard in passing that it was all pagan and it wasn't worship unto God. But then some people dismiss that and says, "Oh, no, we can repackage it for Jesus Christ." And I said, "Okay." And then I started my mind just started opening up to this message, and I just started saying, you know what? He's saying that's the truth. If he's saying that's the truth about Professor Toto, then he's saying this about the truth about the Bible. And I could never catch him and no, that's not right. I always caught him like, yeah, that's right, and more you're teaching us. And so as time went on, we started still listening to a bunch of other podcasts and a bunch of other pastors. But the more I kept trying to find the right truth was that it has to be somewhere small. It can't be somewhere big. It has to be really from really a small people group. And as time went on, we just started slowly coming to First Harvest Ministries, me and my family. And then by Tabernacles of 2022, we went to Tabernacles. And it was the first time they said, you know what, we're not going to have Professor Toto like we did before. We're going to have it more biblical. So the decorations and how we have everything set up is going to be a little different, and but we'll do a little bit of Toto, but we want to really focus on the feast. And I said, okay. And I remember sitting there listening to him. I remember just praising Yahweh at the time, and that was the first time I really tried to learn how to dance and just try to get in the spirit of things. And a lot of new things were coming at me, but I didn't understand it, and I was really like nervous about what's going on until it just started saying, no, this is right. And just even how he preaches, I love the way how Pastor preaches every single Sabbath. I absolutely love it, even Bible study. And then eventually at the end of it, we also were doing before we even got to Tabernacles, we were doing the Zoom Bible study. And that's where we started seeing a lot of people that we see and know now who are faithful elders and ministers in this body. And I just remember when we went to Tabernacles, I said, oh my gosh, there's those brothers, there's those sisters. Hi, I remember seeing you on Zoom. And they said, me too. And it was just so cool to see that. I never experienced that before. And then all of a sudden, when we got back home, I said, I think we found the church that we've been searching for. And it was that church, First Harvest Ministries. And then the following week, we confirmed it. And because Pastor we were doing the Maseroth, the Maseroth series. And he said, have you ever thought you were the oddball child in your family or in the group or just even in your church? And I remember looking at all of us and myself, I said, yeah, that's me. And that was the moment where I said, he showed us, because you're Israel, you're the new remnant, Israel, hallelujah. And I just remember thinking that is so cool, that we are a part of something bigger. And I remember coming down here in 2023 and with my family, and we met all the elders, we met ministers, we met pastor, and we saw the church for the first time, just see what they're doing here, what they're doing on the land, what they're doing in the studio, what they're doing at the church, what they do for each other. It was just something I never experienced. I never experienced the feast. I never experienced Sabbath. I never experienced being in the presence of Yahweh, Almighty God. I never experienced just the love of everyone. I never experienced all the revelations that Pastor has put together. And it's something very special here. It's something very special to my heart as well, to be a part of this and to serving you guys and to be with you guys and to just really give my all to do everything. And it's just an honor to be watching Pastor up there and sitting in the pews every night for when we have Sabbath, and just like hearing the words that come alive, and just hearing the Spirit flow through Sister Karen's voice, and just hearing the prayers from the elders and the saints. It's just something that I'll never ever get to experience again in my life. Right now, I try to drink every moment as if it was my last, because this is something special. This is truly the hand of Yahweh on this little ministry, this little church with a shack with a steeple, if I'm getting that quote right. And just everybody that I come in contact with, whether it's the elders or ministers or just brothers and sisters, it's just something different. And whenever I get to talk with them, they all have similar stories that say, yeah, I was the oddball child. I thought of different things. I started questioning this and that. And sometimes I made good decisions. Sometimes I made really bad decisions. It depends on the person. But one thing is that all of a sudden I just started getting drawn all of a sudden. Just out of nowhere, I got drawn to this message. I don't know where, I don't know how, I don't know why. All I can say is a Yahweh thing. It's a Yahweh thing. And even as you're listening to me there, I just really encourage you that you're in the right place. If you've been testing the waters, if you've been asking Yahweh with all your heart, what do you want me to do? Whether to pack down and move down here to Mississippi to help with the work, or this is my home, this is where I belong, and Pastor Vaughn is my spiritual shepherd that will carry me and walk with me through my walk with Yahweh, and just show me the right direction, not make sure I don't fall off the wrong path. If you're thinking of that, I would really highly encourage you to consider Pastor Vaughn, Pastor Karen to be your pastors, and to partner up with them. Because when you do, it's just something just so wonderful. And I just can't express it enough. I just can't express how privileged I am to be sitting here and to be explaining it to you guys. And just even going forward, I am very satisfied where I'm at. I'm very satisfied where Yahweh has brought me. From those days of just being at church, where I would just be wanting something more. And even my family says the same thing. They were wanting something more. And now they're here as the body, here working, here to come to the feast whenever we're able to make it. And we will make all of them. And just here to just be in the presence of Yahweh, and just here to always just to hear from Him, because it's just something new and something you won't get anywhere out there in the world, nor you can't get anywhere out there in other churches. And I just really want to say I am so honored to be here. And Yahweh bless you. Yahweh bless you, Pastor. Thank you so much for everything that you have given to our family, to the ministry, to many, many families. Thank you so much for putting truth out there constantly. Thank you so much for putting Toto out there. Thank you so much for watching over us. Thank you so much for everything that you've given us. Yahweh, I just thank Yahweh with all my heart that you came into our lives in the nick of time, and we're going to be here until the day we all die. And we absolutely love this message, love these people, love where Yahweh's taking us. And it's a privilege to be here. So with that being said, God bless.